Hello, Shannon here. I want to say hello to everybody and wish you a happy Passover week and for the past Easter and whatever else you may be engaged in this week. I took the week off to just kind of bask in the whole season. Um, but I have a video here that I'd like to do today on Passover and include a couple of biblical stories and give a little bit of a message concerning something that happens in the Passover Seder. So, first of all, I'd like to thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, for your undivided attention, for choosing to spend your time and energy with me. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you get something really good out of this, a blessing, hopefully. So, to start off with the Passover Seder, I would like to talk about the Afikomen, which is hidden at the end of the Seder. So let's talk about the three pieces of matzah that are hidden in that are put on the table for the Seder. I'm not going to talk about the entire Seder. I just want to talk about the matzah and the afikomen, and then I will lead into another story to kind of seal what I'm talking about. So in the Seder, there are three pieces of matzah that are put on the table, matzah being the unleavened bread. They're stacked on top of each other. The middle piece is broken in half. The smaller piece is put on the table to be eaten during the Seder. And then the bigger piece is hidden for the children to find at the end of the Seder, and in the hopes that the children stay awake. Well, I've been saying all along with my videos that I want to correlate the physical word with what it means spiritually, and that's what I'm going to do today. Again, I am going to show what is spiritually going on and what these things represent. And the videos I presented beforehand should have already led you into understanding what I'm saying today. If you haven't watched those, please go back and look at them because it will teach you a little bit more about what I'm saying today. These three pieces of matzah, I believe, represent the three pattern in the Bible: death, burial, resurrection. But I also believe it represents three kinds of people. The first one on the top represents those of the fleshly nature. That would be the firstborn, those like Adam. The middle one, I believe, represents those like Yeshua. Anytime you have three, in the sequence of two, there's the firstborn and secondborn. When there's a third, it's the one in the middle that represents both the firstborn and secondborn, or the flesh and the spirit. So that middle piece that's broken, the smaller piece that's put back into the napkin, I believe represents Yeshua, and the bigger piece is hidden. And I believe that piece actually represents those who are like him, those who are living sacrifices, and they're hidden. They're hidden to be found at the end by a child that stays awake through the entire Passover. So let me just correlate what I believe Passover really is. I believe we are in the midst of an ongoing Passover of 7,000 years. And I believe that during these last 7,000 years, those three pieces of matzah being consumed and devoured, aka eaten, during that Passover represent the firstborn, represent the secondborn. Both have been consumed and devoured for many reasons. And the middle one, Yeshua, was consumed and devoured in the middle of the 7,000 years. Well, on the fourth day, which again, you take a lamb in and you love it for 4 days and then you slit its throat. And I believe his slaughtering represented the firstborn. I believe it represented Adam in the garden who got death. Therefore, his death was him living out that punishment to Adam, but his resurrection is actually the punishment given to Eve. In great pain and suffering, you bear fruit, because Yeshua was fruitful and he multiplied, and that's his body who is hidden. So the Afikomen has been said to be perhaps the last that's supposed to be eaten as the dessert. Well, we have many messages going on today about what Passover is, what Easter is. They're all correlated together, okay? And so the Afikomen, I looked up in my phone what the Talmud says, and this is for those of you that are Jewish who look to the Talmud. And it says that according to the Talmud, we snatch matzahs on the night of Passover in order that the children should not fall asleep. Now remember, for 7,000 years, we're supposed to not fall asleep. In other words, be the walking dead like those like Adam. We're supposed to stay awake till the end. Okay? So the kid who finds the Afikomen gets a special treat or gift. In others, the piece can be ransomed for a special gift of their choosing. Now, when I saw this, it really tied in with the story I was already studying to tie in with this, and that's the story of David who took a census of Israel, the people. Now, and that's in 2 Samuel. I believe it's in 2 Samuel 24. You can go back and read that story. But, when we're taking a census, in Exodus 30, it says, it's back to Moses. It says, the Lord spoke to Moses, when you take a census of the sons of Israel to number them, then each one of them shall give a ransom for himself to the Lord when you number them, so that there will be no plague among them when you number them. The reason this is important is because when David counted the people, first of all, it says that he had a stronghold. He was with the Philistines, the mighty men. He's watching them in action. I believe, and there's lots of speculation on what anybody believes, but I believe that he, in keeping company with the mighty men, those who basically are of the fleshly nature, that it rubbed off on him and that he was in his ego. He basically had a stronghold of knowledge, and he's looking at these mighty men. He sent them, he basically made the statement, I wish that I could drink the water in Bethlehem. But when the mighty men, three of them, brought it to him, he wouldn't drink it. Well, I'm assuming that water represents the water of Yeshua, you know, that water that lays his life down takes the blame. And David's refusing to drink it. And I believe he's wanting to count his men to see if he has enough men to be mighty to fight a war. But he forgets one thing: in counting Israel, a ransom must be given by the people he counts. He doesn't take that ransom. And what happens? He ends up noticing his error. He appeals to God for forgiveness, and he agrees to 3 days of plagues, which, if you don't give a ransom, you are subject to plagues. But that word for plague, I wanted to give to you. The first word for plague is in the concordance, goes back to the Hebrew word bar, which literally means word, gossip. So let's look at the garden again with Adam and Eve. Eve is giving a ransom with her words. She is saying, I did it. I believed. She is giving that ransom. She's basically offering herself as the guilt offering so that she may be redeemed. And that was the whole point in counting Israel. Now, let me just remind all of us watching, don't we as a people try to say who Israel is or isn't? We're trying to count Israel. Oh, it's the people who live in Israel. Oh, it's the people with the Jewish bloodline. Oh, it's the people who believe in Jesus. I'm sorry, people, but none of those things are right. It's those who give the ransom with their mouth. Okay? We also know in Psalms it says, because that ransom was considered money. But we know Psalm 49, 7 through 8 says, no man can by any means redeem his brother or give to God a ransom for him. In other words, this is why the Jews don't receive Jesus as saving us. Why? Because we have to do what he did in order to be the ransom for ourselves. We have to give with our mouth as a living sacrifice what he did on the cross. We are required to do something. His death on the cross was to redeem those who were already doing that. And that would be those like Eve in the garden who gave a ransom for herself with her words as a guilt offering. So in the story of David, the same thing is true. He didn't get a ransom. So he's counting all these people as Israel. However, not all of them really were. They weren't. And the ones that weren't were plagued with a plague. And that word for plague goes back to the word debar, which means words, gossip, which is what Adam did with his words in the garden. That was the plague. Now, if you read the story of David later, that word for plague that ceased after David basically purchases the threshing floor after he's repented. He realizes what he's done. He wants to stop the plagues. So he buys with 50 shekels of silver, which 5 is the number for grace. So this right here, what he's doing is a picture of Yeshua, who with his life, because the threshing floor is basically that beating that we all go through, and it separates the wheat and the chaff. The chaff cannot withstand the beating, but the wheat can. And so for 3,000 years, we've all been beaten down by a plague, those who persecute others for transgressions. That's exactly what is going on here with David. People are persecuting each other. That's what started in David's heart. Well, actually it wasn't even David. It was Jehovah that actually put it on David. But David was in a stronghold, meaning he wasn't walking with the Lord, drinking the right water. But he came to himself later and repented for what was done. And so he's buying the threshing floor. And basically, it's a picture of Yeshua on the cross who bought the threshing floor for grace, to give grace. But the importance of this is to understand, back to the Afikomen, the people who are hidden, that are like Yeshua. They've been hidden. And that word hidden goes back to Queen Esther. Her name means hidden. She changed her name. She marries a Babylonian. Her name comes from Ishtar, which comes from Easter. Okay, I'm making a correlation here because I'm saying all the physical things that we're doing, Passover, Easter, whatever, has no bearing on the spiritual. The spiritual has to be one way, a ransom with your words, done in the garden by Eve. She is that hidden matzah, and all of those like her. And Esther was a picture of her. So was Tamar in the story of Judah and Tamar. They're a picture of the second coming. David in his story was a picture of Yeshua, who came in the middle of Passover. But there was still 3,000 years left before the second coming, which is the Afikomen. And what are we supposed to do? Eat it for dessert. What did Yeshua say? Feed my people. What are we feeding? The message of grace. This is what Passover is all about. Now, I'm going to do another video on Queen Esther and her story. And I'm going to break down her story from the beginning to the end to show another 7,000 years, another picture of Passover and all the things that have happened in it with the 3 matzahs. Okay, now the third matzah is supposed to represent the spiritual, the one in the middle, Yeshua, which first was represented by Abel, who was killed. So these are repeating patterns throughout the word that I'm trying to show you to bring together the message of the Afikomen. If you go and you read my book, I have a chapter called Abba Father's Hidden Matzah, the Afikomen, where I explain this. But however, I've explained a little bit more as far as the ransom and why David was wrong in his census. He miscounted who Israel was because he didn't get the ransom from their mouth. Your ransom says whether you're Israel or not. Are you the guilt offering with your words? Or are you persecuting others for transgressions and being that plague to others, which actually in turn kills you? You will be the one who dies. Adam got death, not Eve. She was killed with the words, but he dies physically, and Yeshua came and did it in the flesh to redeem those like Eve, to turn the kingdom back into her hands, those like her, man or woman. This is not about a man or a woman. This is about the male spirit, which is the fleshly nature, versus the female spirit, which is the spiritual nature. So I'm hoping that you're getting a little bit out of that, the Passover. This is the week of Passover. I'm hoping that I'm getting some ears that are hearing, some eyes that are seeing as to what I'm saying, because it's all relevant to the times that we are in. I found that hidden matzah, the Afikomen, and I am trying to feed you with it for dessert. So I'm hoping that you've gotten a little piece of that dessert and you'd like a little more because I have more to give. My next video, I'm going to break down Queen Esther's story and show how Passover is hidden in it, and how all the feasts are hidden in the 7,000 years that we've been living. Some of us have been keeping them all daily. Others of us have focused on keeping them at certain times of the year. But in the future, I will show exactly who's doing what. With that being said, I'm hoping that you got quite a bit out of this, that you were provoked to go back and read the story. I am doing highlights right now. I'm not going over every single word, but when I really dig out a story, I look up every single word, and that is coming. Right now, I'm just giving you enough to get you interested and to hear a deeper, brighter message that might give you some hope and some peace for the times that we're in. Because I guarantee you, God's people, they are being redeemed and they are protected, hidden, and safe. And so, with that being said, I hope that you have a blessed day.